take us through this quickly, Henrik. At what age do you go to school? Five or you start your regular school, your elementary school, we call it. At what? 5, 6 years old?
Yeah, 6.
Okay, 6 years old. And how many years of school are you required to have?
Yeah, this is the kicker here, because Swedes, I don't know exactly the numbers in Norway, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, that's the Nordic countries we're talking about, but in Sweden anyway, people here go to school longer than anywhere else in the world.
How long?
There's a reason for that, yeah. You're mandatory, you have to go to up to, is it 13 years? I believe it is mandatory, but most people go 16 up to 20 years. People even continue after that. People go back to school after they found out that there's no jobs out there to get. So they're encouraged by the government to take out a loan to go back to school to teach them, garbage, knowledge, things that aren't worth anything, basically. So they can go, push papers for the government or something like that.
And what do you do for the first, say, 10 years of your school? Of course, you're a child, and as you go into your teenage years, what are they teaching you? Is it literature? Is it science? I mean, what are they teaching?
Good question. I mean, this is a period that I just try to suppress from my own personal, life in that sense. It's very. This is the other thing. The problem I'm getting at is the diversity of the things that you're getting is very, very limited. Homeschooling has been banned in Sweden.
Homeschooling has been banned?
Yes, since 2010, you're not allowed to homeschool your child.
And why is that?
What does that say? Yeah, exactly. What is this? Well, why is that? It's because you have an idea that I've heard presented even officially that it's dangerous for the child not to be in the social collectivist environment that is presented to them in the school. In other words, there's a fear that the bias of the parent, for instance, is going to be instilled into the child. Therefore, the education needs to be taken care of by professionals that can, take care of you properly in a sense. But the fact is, as John Taylor Gatto has pointed out, who was the teacher of the year, 5 years in a row in New York, something like that, that it's a horrendous system that we turn over our kids to. Where we don't know who the people are who are taking care of the child, and in many cases, the state adopts, in a sense, the child, and they take over, complete control, in a sense, to the child. And how people have allowed themselves to willingly, in a sense, give up their child to the state is amazing to me. How did that happen? How did that come about when they first presented those ideas back in, 20s, 30s, maybe even later? I'm not sure exactly when that began. Different parts in different countries, I think, or different timelines there. But that's absolutely amazing. So I think that the bandwidth, again, of what you're getting, there's not much private schools in Sweden. Well, some of them have actually been privatized, but it doesn't matter. The curriculum is still run from central command, being the state or the government. So it doesn't matter, even if you have someone personally profiting from the school, that still means that you have a line that has to be taught, who's set according to the government. So you don't really have a diversity in the education that the kids are given. Hence, you end up with same thing, oneness, in a sense, to use a new age term even, that this is creating a very homogenized people who are very collectivist in their attitude. Hence, individually, they're living like in a bubble. I mean, I don't want to be mean or anything like that here, but this is, I mean, I have I have serious, concerns about how the system has destroyed, in my view, a people and a country, because change has not been allowed in, and the people who potentially could bring about that change has been so indoctrinated and socially conformed according to these behaviorist models that nothing is happening. You don't get a response. You don't get even an incentive or like an energy flow there to actually try to push things in a different direction. And that's why it's been so successful, this model. And hence, I think that's also why it's being promoted around the world, even more importantly.
So I take it that if you get too far out of line, somebody's going to report you to the authorities for being unmutual or something.
Well, exactly. You're back in the prisoner scenario, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Pat McGowan is one of my heroes, always was. Well, I mean, is that possible? I mean, do people get jerked up by the short hairs if they step out of line and they're not, and they're either, I mean, let me just ask a specific question.
Sure.
If it gets back to somebody in authority that you're putting ideas into your child's head that does not conform with the social algorithm, does that parent get in trouble for this?
Yes.
I mean, do they have their children taken away, or do they just say, well, I'm injecting foreign thoughts into my child's head. I'm going to go ahead and voluntarily surrender them to the state. I mean, does this happen?
It does. It does happen. This happened very, very recently. As a matter of fact, as timing turns out, the next program that we're going to feature on Red Ice Radio is actually with a Swedish guy, Dominic Johansson. Or about Dominic Johansson. That's actually the child that was taken by the Swedish social services. I know that this happens in America too. I hear a lot of cases around the world where the most ludicrous reasons are given by the social services or the state, and hence they take away the child. But this is a really, really horrible story. And the story is long in that sense, and people can go obviously and listen to the whole interview, but to just do it, brief and short, Christer is the father, and his wife, or the mother, Annie, they got their child stolen from them, basically kidnapped by the state. They were actually going to leave at the time, and the reason is homeschooling, by the way, so I'm clear about that.
John B. Wells, your speakers for the evening, along with Henrik Palmgren, and I'm going to read a little email from Stephen for you here. There's nothing greater than getting to the state of self-challenge, and that of seeking perfection in any given society. Just got back from my 6th trip to Sweden and the Netherlands, and could not disagree with your guest more so. If anything, in so many ways, they are light years ahead of us. Why are those of your fear-based mindset so afraid to advance and or experiment in the quest of taking the best from other lands to make our land even a better world for all? Your idiotology has only succeeded in creating the second highest inequity nation in the world. A closed mind is a wonderful thing to lose. Well, this is a person who's obviously had his own completely unique experience in going over there, because, in my experience, the only people who really enjoy socialism are the fat cats at the top who run it. The only people who enjoy living in a communist situation are the fat cats at the top who run it. Human nature precludes perfection. And that is why America is a wonderful ongoing experiment. Yes, we argue, we name call, and in the end, we prevail. And the last time I checked, up until recently at least, with these ongoing rolling wars, I think we are more of a benefit to most of the world than a detriment. Now, Henrik, if you disagree, you can go ahead and slam me also.
No, I'm not going to do that. This is obviously the problem with the situation in a sense, but also the advantage that we need to discuss these things. We need to talk about it. Some people might think that this is a good thing, and I'm not here to tell them that they can't live like this. And this is the difference here, though, in my approach and the state's government's approach, or some of the other socialists out there, because they want to say how you should live your life. And that's the case here in Sweden. They say how you should live your life. If you're a little bit different, if you're a little bit outside of that perimeter, then you're not in trouble, but you're you come up against a very difficult force, in a sense, an energy to work against, because there's no channels there to express those needs. Even if you have a talent, there's a multitude of reasons that we need to talk about why I believe the system is detrimental. But let's just address a little bit what the person's saying. Let's address this economy thing, because that always comes up. Free health care. There is no such thing. This universalist welfare state that is promoted around the world, that there is no such thing. We are paying for it. Everybody's paying for these things all the time. What's happening is that the government has basically is in a situation where they take things from you. And then if you follow the behavioral model, if you put those money into the right places, okay, you can get a little allowance in a sense back, depending on how you choose to spend those money. But it's all it's very behavioralist. Let me give you a few examples. If we go back to the ideas of the concept for the home of the Swedish people, folkhemmet, right? There's an assumption that the welfare state of Scandinavia, were high-taxed regimes which try to redistribute wealth from rich businessmen to the average person. And here's where many people agree. They, oh, great, let's do that, and we can get more money. But actually, in the Swedish case, this is not happening at all. on the whole, the Scandinavian system are not meant to be, redistributive in a sense. Nor are businessmen or even businesses the targets. Businesses are relatively lightly taxed compared to many developed nations. I think it's much more difficult for smaller business owners. But if you talk about monopoly companies that I'm talking about, then you're in a situation where they can, obviously get tax breaks from the government because they work together. The government need those monopolies so that the Swedes have somewhere to go, to work. But the problem here is that it's the individual that is financially, punished in a sense in the Swedish society. The Swedish welfare state in particular, was designed so that the average individual is highly taxed instead. There's a well-known case here in Sweden of author Astrid Lindgren. She's the one who wrote the Pippi Longstocking stories, right?
Right.
And she discovered that her tax bill was 102% of her earnings. My question is this to the person who's claiming that this is beneficial for, well, I don't know if they claim that it's beneficial for the individual, but my point here is that, again, on the surface, it might look perfectly fine. If you go to a nice area in Stockholm or Gothenburg and mingle around there, you're going to see, wow, this is amazing, this is great, where all the money from all the people around the country has been put into. First of all, it's really expensive in people in the business world, the marketplace. It's very expensive for people to live, to eat. They don't make that much in terms of, we talk about the salary distribution. It's kind of even across the board, and some people think that this is great, and that's fine. I'm not here to say that you can't think like that. I'm just saying, if you have a drive in Sweden, if you have a reason to try to make it outside of this box in a sense, if you're an inventor, if you've done something great, these talents are not encouraged in a sense. There's a really strange unwritten law in Sweden which is called the Jante law. And this is basically it's a pattern of group behavior towards individuals within Scandinavian communities, which negatively portrays and criticizes individual success and achievements as unworthy and inappropriate. Many Swedes would deny, this is not there anymore, blah, blah, blah. I would argue, yes, it is. It's still there under the current. This have been ingrained into the people for many, many, many years. We potentially might even be talking hundreds of years here. So, this law basically states that, don't think you're anything special or that you're, better than us in a sense. It's all about the hive that I wanted to talk about earlier. And again, I encourage this person to go to some of these smaller cities around in Sweden and just check out some of the options that they have there. You'll have one chain of the grocery stores you can see everywhere. There's hardly any choice when it comes to the if you want to have clothes items or stuff like that. We get the imported stuff in from China. There's no production left in Sweden. It's all a service economy. Everything is so equal that it's detrimental. This egalitarianism that I'm talking about. Sure, some people will think that this is fantastic and great. I don't. I think it's a problem. I think it's great. There is diversity, that there is differences. If you could take this person out to some of the gulags outside of Stockholm or, Gothenburg or Malmö, the three biggest cities in Sweden, and see how people live in these apartments that are like concrete boxes, dwellings to exist in, I think that this person would disagree. We had an American, he's actually a teacher at Stockholm University, was on our program talking about this. He had lived in Sweden for, I think it was 11 years, something like that. And, it was interesting to talk about his perception of Sweden when he first came here, some of the things that were happening. But he even mentioned actually he had a friend who was, more liberal, more progressive on the left side of the politics swing. And he was that, all the time until he came to Sweden and could actually see the effects of the system.